Want a roll call, Mr. Chair? Councilor Robinson.
Here.
Councilor Mercier.
Here.
Councilor
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. Today we call this subcommittee. This is the City Council Cannabis Control Subcommittee meeting to order. I'm joined by my colleagues, Councilor Mercier, Councilor Noon. We have Councilor Yem, Councilor Gitche is present as well. We also have Attorney Michael Broderick, representing the City Law Department, and we also have Lloyd DeJesus, representing Development Services. So this meeting on the agenda will be discussing, it's a good time, I thought, to bring together for a conversation regarding some of the changes that have been implemented on the state level with the Cannabis Commission, and they've issued a couple guidances to municipalities in regards to best practices around host community agreements, as well as best practices on municipal equity and industry participation. And part of the reason of the motion was a discussion regarding current cannabis businesses and review of zoning for possible future industry expansion, is because that's something that in the past we've had conversations, brief rundown. When the city agreed to take part in allowing in the industry, at the time, it was decided there was 5 retail dispensary locations that would be permitted within the city limits. We've been at our cap as far as license issued. I believe all 5 are operational at this point, and something to consider, because I've had questions myself regarding if there was any room to expand or additional licensure. Some of that, I think, would include taking a look at the zoning, current zoning, because not every zone in the city allows this industry, or retail, I should say, into that zone. So that's something that we would have to discuss, and I think it's a good time to call this together, especially on the heels of some of the changes that the commission themselves on the state level have implemented. I believe it was the city of Haverhill that initiated a situation that impacts all municipalities in the state, where host community agreements, and some of the changes have been, initially it was a 5-year sunset clause, and it was a little bit freer for the municipality to kind of charge the operating industry or business owners that host community impact fee. As a result of Haverhill's situation, it's a lot stricter. I think now there's a lot more transparency baked in to the best practices and guidelines on how municipalities can charge, especially retail locations. And so I think it's a good opportunity for us to have that conversation. The city has been historically allowed, I believe, to charge up to 3% of the gross sales for a retail dispensary location within city limits. Now there's a lot more reporting and a lot more transparency involved, that you have to prove the impact and justify those expenditures on the community in order to recoup that money, so to say, from the businesses. Through you, well, actually, to the city solicitor, if I may ask, are you aware of how many zones currently we do allow retail?
I'm not aware of the specific zones, no. I'm aware of the caps on the retail, and then we have no cap on the cultivation in the city. So in terms of retail space, I'm aware of the 5 retail locations, where they are, but I'm not aware of the zoning.
Thank you. I think as a city moving forward, we need some of the things that we might want to start considering and looking at. We need to figure out where the state and the regulations are on delivery. I think that's a big piece that we've heard time and time again mentioned, and I'm not sure if the regs are officially rolled out from a state level yet. I also think consumption lounge is something that's on the horizon, and they still have not solidified, I believe, the regulations surrounding consumption lounge as well. So those are 2 other opportunities in this industry that, as a city, I think we need to start kind of having these discussions to say, at least on a local host community scale, what does it look like to us? What is our community okay with? So when the state does sanction and allow these type of businesses to come in, we have a working template or working document, I think, at that point, that we can incorporate into whatever the state guidelines are. So I think that those are 2 key pieces, as well as looking at zoning, if the wish is now or in the future to expand on, for example, the retail where we have 5 and we've been maxed out. Do we want to add a 6th or 7th? And if so, where are those locations without a negative impact to the existing businesses and watering down that opportunity for business owners? Another best practice that came out, the guidance on municipal equity and industry participation. I think that's another huge piece. I think that's something that with any of these new businesses, if the city is looking to expand now or in the future, we have to be well aware that, there are some designations that for applicants, we should be sticking to these guidelines, where for the first 3 years, I believe, applications that will be considered and processed should be either social equity applicants or economic empowerment applicants, those are 2 designations that a potential business owner would have to receive from the Cannabis Commission, Cannabis Control Commission, not on the local city level. We don't give those designations. So anyone that might be watching this at home or anyone interested in trying to get involved in this industry, at least in Lowell, and I know it's a statewide policy pretty much, that's something that you might want to research and look into if you're interested with the Cannabis Control Commission, those two designations, because, I mean, we've seen, and the reason being for it is because we saw when the state kind of regulated the industry itself, the floodgates were open, and we saw money coming in from out of state that kind of bumped Massachusetts residents, never mind Lowellians, out of contention really for a lot of these businesses because they just didn't have the resources or the means to even have a fighting chance to open up. I spoke to one gentleman that opened a location, cultivation, in Holyoke, and he explained to me it cost him $500,000 almost just on a build out for a cultivation facility. And that's not even all the permitting and licensure, and you have to foot that and float that until you're licensed and up and running. So I think as a community where we have plenty of people that are interested in getting their foot in the door on this, it's only wise for us as the policymakers in the administration to take this all into consideration and cover out a policy that works for everybody. And that's why I think from conversations we've had in the past, I think this administration and my colleagues on the council, we're well aware. I think we're all supportive of following the best practices and guidance from the Cannabis Control Commission as far as these designations for the first 3 years, looking at applicants. But I also think we need to carve out a plan on what does expansion look like for us as a city, if that's the wish of the body at a future point, and as well as maybe inviting in the commission or getting an update as to where they are on, as we mentioned, the delivery and the consumption lounges. I'll open this up to any of my colleagues if they have any questions or anything they'd like to add to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish that I had had this to look at and read it. I just got it right now, and there's not much I can say to something that I haven't just even opened the paper and looked at it. So I wish I had had that over the weekend so I could have been a little bit more knowledgeable. But the fact is, I did look through my notes and different responses in regards to the Cannabis Commission and things that we were looking at and asking questions about. And it seems that I have information from Councilor Noon, who asked have the CFO report the balance of the funding in the reserve account. So it seemed like we had an account with money coming in from the 3% state tax, and then we had 25% coming in as well, which I don't know that we're getting anything anymore, but we had in the reserve 1.148 million, and they used just a portion of it, which was $190,000 of that was voted by the council in January of 22 to repair the Arch Street garage, which is the police department's garage. And I'm wondering, do we have any more money in it? I don't recall using any more. I don't recall a vote coming our way. I just want to know, and I'm probably asking the wrong people. You probably don't know. The solicitor would know. I don't know. Lloyd, you wouldn't know either. What's the balance? Do we still have money in it? I'm still concerned about that, and I think Councilor Noon would be as well. I don't know if there's any money in it, so I wish that we had probably Ted Panagiotopoulos, the city treasurer here, or Kelly Oakes, the city auditor here, or even Connor Baldwin. So I think maybe I might say that when you do your report to ask, because I think Councilor Noon was on the right track with asking that question in 22, but still I'm concerned about it as well. So that's about all that I have to say. it's too bad that we're not getting 25% of the overall, some money from, this is a business. I'm certainly sure they pay taxes. That in itself is a good thing, but I think that it would be nice to get a little share of that profit that they make. Not that I want to take it all, but a little bit, 3% at least. So thank you. That's my concern. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We certainly can, Councilor Mercier, ask for an update report on the host agreement, and money going to the host agreement account and others. We also need to know whether or not a host community agreement was updated, giving the guidance, the recent guidance by the Cannabis Control Commissions on municipal equities and industrial participation, as well as the guidance on host agreement. So this is all new. This is a few months ago. We as city, did we update our host agreement as in response to that? And that's something that we need to know as a council. The other things too is that I understand that we only have 5 dispensaries thus far. That is the cap. So maybe Attorney Broderick can go back and find out what is the process should the city want to expand that cap. And if we were to do that, I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, that of all agencies, I would say the city planner would know best to really to balance the business growth as well with the community need. You need to do that to ensure that on the one hand you want the business to grow in terms of the dispensary, while minimizing the potential disruption, right, to the resident and the neighborhood. And that's why we need to be making sure that if we were to expand, making sure that community input is always there, as far as location. And, we need to take that in because we've done that in the past, Mr. Chairman. Should we go that route? I'm not sure if that's the route we're going, but I heard you said talking about looking forward down the road to expand the cap. If we do that, we need to really making sure that, minimize the potential disruption and impact on the resident neighborhood. That's what I want. I can't stress enough on that. The other part about this meeting, Mr. Chairman, you asked also to expand, but a while back, if you remember, we, the city, working on delivery, host agreement deliveries. Where are we at on it? I don't know, Attorney Broderick. Do you know where we at on the delivery, the host community agreement?
So taking your issues one at a time, the host community agreements, we have been updating them, sending them out about, I want to say 9 months ago. There was a subcommittee sort of within the city ordinance that we took together, DPD, finance, everybody, the law, all got together, and we reframed and we standardized our host community agreements so that no business got special. We negotiated them still, but we have a framework by which we negotiate, bringing up, the concerns of the city that are not, while the guidelines sent from the Cannabis Control Commission are good, they are largely recitations of the law that are already in place, and they ignore things like power, taxes, water use, minimizing odor use, noise complaints, things like that. So all of that was built into the new and updated host community agreements that we all sat down with several meetings over the course of several months, and it's been rolled out, and there's been pushback from the Cannabis Control Commission on most of those updates, largely because the commission is sort of in a state of flux. There's an acting chair, there's an acting CEO, there's an acting general counsel, so there's some issues that they are needing to iron out, and there's not a lot of consistency. We're working directly with the businesses to keep them updated, making them work for each business. Thus far, we've been trying to be very responsive. I've been doing these for the last 3 months now, and everyone has been updated. We're completed all the negotiations. Everyone has their updated HCAs. We're just trying to keep them rolling.
Mr. Chairman, Councilors, Attorney Broderick, you said update host community agreement 9 months ago. Is that for dispensary?
That's for dispensaries, cultivation, it's standard across, depending on whatever you wish to do. It's such that if we do have someone that has decided that they want to do delivery, transport, things like that, it is such that you can expand, that it's sort of universal, and you can just sort of tie that in so that no one has an advantage, everyone has the same relative agreement, and there are certain details that maybe they would like to negotiate on, perfectly fine, but everyone sort of has a level playing field across the board so that the city's not showing favoritism to one or the other.
How much change was that, the update one? Is it from the previous?
It was a pretty extensive update. The previous ones seemed to be written, there was no guidance from anyone, Cannabis Control Commission or anyone else, so everyone was creating them out of whole cloth. And now that we have the updates, we have best practices from other cities. We took a look at other cities, how they do it, and we sort of took best practice and based upon the needs of the city and the needs of the businesses in the city, we sort of developed a host community agreement with updates on it for the needs of the city and focused on that. So it's a much more extensive update than it was previously, the first one.
So was there any pushback from the business?
Almost none.
None, okay. Thank you.
There were, and I will say, there were negotiations with the business. There were some issues that they disagreed with, and it was just a part of the negotiation, which was pretty standard.
Okay, okay. Well, would it be possible for us to get a copy of the update one?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm glad to see the city has been incorporating the best practice changes as well as getting everyone at the table that plays an integral role in this, in facilitating pretty much a standardized document that's going to kind of lay out clearly to potential business applicants as well as existing. This is what the city's going to require in this field, in this field, in this field. I'd like to touch on, as far as the HCA, I personally feel, I think this was long overdue to repeal it. I mean, we don't really, if you look around the city, we don't really have an impact fee, so to say, on any of the industry. Liquor stores, there's no impact fee. Convenience stores with tobacco, there's no impact fee. So to kind of specifically target, and the state allowing us to specifically target one industry, I don't think that's good for business. So I'm glad to see the state took heed and Haverhill stepped up and started the ball moving on this because it's only right. I mean, if you look around our city, we can all attest, our biggest impact on our host community would be social services. We can't charge an impact fee on that. So I think it's a smart move because, I mean, realistically, it's minimal to zero impact on the community as far as this industry operating within our borders. We're not sending first responders to retail locations on a regular basis or any of that stuff. So I'm glad to see. Some of the statutory and regulatory requirements be reasonably related to the cost imposed upon the municipality by the operation of the licensee. Not amount to more than 3% of the gross sales of the license. Not be effective after the license's 8th year of operation. So they extended out that 5-year sunset to 8. But it also was a lot more challenging and difficult for us to even transparently say, try to retrieve any of that host community impact fee, and I think that's fine. I think the minute the city of Lowell and other municipalities begin the conversations and consideration, do we let the industry in? I think we should have embraced it just like we did with every other industry and made sure that, as my colleague Councilor Noon spoke to, I think mitigating and minimizing the impact to any neighborhoods, any communities, any negative impact period across the board should be a priority for everyone, including the business owners. I think it goes both ways. It should commence no sooner than the date the license is granted, a final license by the commission, and not mandate a certain percentage of total gross sales as the community impact fee. All reasonable, in my opinion. One thing that I'm curious about, do you know Attorney Broderick, have you begun any renegotiations on existing licensure? Have we reached the 5-year mark or whatever it may be for some of the initial businesses that have come in?
So that most of the businesses have renegotiated their initial HCAs. They expired beginning of 2023, so we started this process back in 2023, and we've been consistently updating them since. So we are on the new HCAs now. The Cannabis Control Commission has had issues with some of the language that has been negotiated and has been inconsistent. We're working with the businesses to find language that works, even within the language that we've renegotiated and re-updated. The commission has been inconsistent. So the good news is we have a very good working relationship with most of the businesses in the city, whether cultivation or retail. And it's the real hurdle has been the commission itself accepting the new HCAs and accepting the new negotiated HCAs and the new terms. So they're the real hurdle. So it hasn't been the businesses.
See, and I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I think everyone I've spoken to that's operating in one format within this industry in the city, they seem very happy with the amount of time that the city will spend with these businesses. If they have questions, people are accessible. I haven't gotten any really complaints or anything from anybody, whether it's someone working the front counter at a retail location or somebody that's overseeing a cultivation facility. I think everyone's finding that the environment and the culture in the city is welcoming to these businesses and these startups, and we are working. So I'm glad to see that. I thank you and your team for that. I also thank you and your team for, again, pulling everyone to the table and coming up with a working document that everybody's input was taken into consideration and something that. So if you don't mind, can you just walk us through briefly the quick process? How does something like that work now? So I open a business here. I get my, I go through the state requirements. I get my HCA signed with the city of Lowell. Now, if the commission changes language or there's something that's not accepted on that level, how does that, do they have to approve a HCA that's signed off by the city of Lowell before it goes into effect? Or can the city approve, the business opens, and then the commission changes something on their end, and how does that impact the business?
So it's worth noting that this is not a problem unique to Lowell. This is something that's going on across the entire Commonwealth. So this isn't unique to us. Usually, if you were to open a business, you would begin the business process, and there's an application process. Francesca in DPD goes through financials, begins that process to make sure that yes, you have a business that is viable, that you have a business plan, the usual stuff that any business would go through when they're applying for licensure within the city, alcohol, whatever it is. After that, once we get beyond that process, there's a provisional licensure process with the Cannabis Control Commission that shows that yes, you can pursue it, you can begin the process. Then they tell you to go get an HCA. We begin the negotiations on the HCA. We haven't, at least in the time that I've been here, we haven't had a new business open up to my knowledge, but it's the same process that they would have for any HCA. Then they negotiate the HCA with us. We would get all the signatures on the HCA, give it to the business. They submit the HCA to the Cannabis Control Commission. Once that's approved, they'll get final licensure, they'll get an operating license, and then they can begin selling, depending on if they get an operating license prior to versus a final license. Those details all depend on the Cannabis Control Commission, but they would get the license and they would go forward and begin operating in whatever capacity that they've applied for.
But in the example you had spoke of earlier, where you renegotiated with the updated HCA from the city of Lowell, and then the commission has had some, uncertainties as far as language or what other pieces they want. Has that impact anything on the local level as far as a renewal of a HCA or a renewal of a business licensure to operate here?
So it hasn't affected their ability to do business. They're all opening. There are deadlines on that. We've been responsive to each business based upon their needs. they can resubmit. That pushes the deadline back for them. So every time they get a rejection from the commission, they can resubmit a new HCA and with updated language. We've been responsive on that. This process has dragged out for several months with some of the businesses. It comes down to who's looking at the HCA from the licensure division at the commission, and so it just comes down to getting that done. Most of them, I'd say probably about half of them actually, have gone through without an issue. Some of them have had some rejections. We've done the back and forth. I think we're on only a handful of businesses have had to go back a second time and redo an HCA with some specific language. There's been a couple examples where the commission has kicked out some language and then complained that language wasn't there in the second draft, so we had to put that language back in. We're waiting on a response from them again. So to my knowledge, it hasn't affected, no one has had to shut down, and that's the goal, of course, of the city, is to make sure all the businesses do not have to suspend business, and no one has, to my knowledge, and we've responded to them in a timely manner to make sure that doesn't happen.
Greatly appreciated. That's excellent. I just think, so we have a few things that my colleagues have brought up, and I think it's a great first conversation to start the ball, and I think we need some updates. And whether or not maybe you and the team, I'd like to keep this meeting open and meet again maybe in a month or so, call another meeting for updates as far as where are we on delivery, where are we with consumption lounge. Also, you already answered, the HCAs have been updated, and as my colleague requested, if we can get a copy of the updated HCA, that way bring everyone up to speed. I got nothing else to end. Does anybody else? And I'd like to also acknowledge Councilor Belanger is in the house. Councilor Yem, would you like to add something?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question, and I remember we make some changes to the zoning regarding the delivery and the courier of the finished products of marijuana, and I just like to know, because the idea behind this to encourage community of color, minorities who want to get into the business but do not have a lot of capital investing in cultivating and all that, but they would be just get the license to be able to deliver the finished products of marijuana. My question would be if we could get a list of how many so far that applied and approved by the city of Lowell, who be the courier, similar to Uber, DoorDash, kind of a business. So that would be interesting to know. If any members of our communities in the city of Lowell would be licensed to do that type of delivery as a business. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question would be, how many delivery applicants have we received? So let me explain. As far as the minorities having access to the industry as a whole, it's yes, there's different licensure, but again, some of the best practices and guidance in a lot of these areas, whether it's cultivation, whether it's delivery, whether it's social consumption, whether it's additional retail locations, any expansion of existing or introduction of new, once the commission comes out with their regulations. That's, I mentioned before, there's two designations, economic empowerment and social equity. Those are given from the Cannabis Control Commission. That's a process that you have to achieve that designation through the commission. On a local level, what our responsibility is, expansion on any of the existing areas, as well as introduction of any of the newer areas. First 3 years, I believe it is, economic empowerment or social equity designated candidates, a business would require, I believe it's 51% majority shareholder of any of these businesses, somebody that has either of those designations, in order to even be considered on a rollout. So say the commission comes out with their policies around delivery finalized. For the city of Lowell to start looking at delivery like that, we should be looking at any businesses that are submitting applications, minimum 51% majority shareholder of that business has to have one of those two designations in order for that application to be on top of the pile. And I think that's our responsibility on a local level to ensure that that practice is followed, because there's many reasons that those designations exist, and I think it's only right to stand by the community and hold that accountable in the community. So that's a big piece, and I think that's a great question. Again, as far as delivery applicants, as far as I know, we don't have any operating in the city yet. Although with delivery, you don't have to be from or in the city, your company, in order to deliver in the city. If that community allows any of the industry in at some point in time, then you can have delivery from surrounding communities. So that's something to be mindful of too. We could have delivery services available as we speak, but as far as how many delivery businesses are licensed out of our city,
Right.
That's a great question.
And that's my question, Mr. Chair. So I just want to see, since we opened up in 2022, we encouraged the resident to apply, and we met the young lady who came to the podium. I don't know if you remember. Yeah, she was talking about talking about that, and then I just want to know if how far you've been, or you have been licensed yet.
Yes, please. I mean, and again, this is a close friend of mine and works in the industry, very familiar with a lot of this. I believe has one of the designations, as I mentioned, so I'll allude to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the City Councilors. Thank you so much for mentioning that.
Please state your name and just...
Absolutely. My name is Nairobi Sanchez, and I actually am a resident here in Lowell. Just to refresh everybody's memory, I'm a UMass Lowell graduate, and I am also a social equity applicant. I love when I'm in this room because I know that I'm going to have a conversation about civics, and it's even better when you can merge that with economics and business, especially in the development of this city. So I'm very happy to see you all. I didn't actually hear the city solicitor mention or Attorney Broderick mention when that HCA was updated, but unfortunately, we're even met with some of those barriers here with the city, and that's not something that I would love to say from the city that I'm residing in and trying to do business in. One of the things that we have encountered is having the HCA not updated. We had inquired about the HCA, how long ago was it? Like 2 months ago, we had inquired about it, and we were kind of stonewalled a little bit. We had gotten an HCA received from Fran and folks over at Developmental Services, but unfortunately, when we had reviewed it with the lawyers that we had at the time, they had told us that there were a couple of things that were not in compliance. One of those things, namely, was the 3% fee, and we want to be very, very mindful and aware of having the city in compliance. So I don't know when that was updated, but I had emailed Mr. Broderick about 2 weeks ago and asked if he could speak to me, but unfortunately he denied to speak to me until I had a letter saying that I was not represented by attorneys. Upon sending that email, I did not receive that letter. I still sent it to the Attorney Broderick, and I did not receive a response from him, but rather from Fran. So I want to be just very clear that although we do care about passing things like delivery and creating opportunities for Black and brown individuals in the city, we're still met with barriers that we shouldn't have. I mean, think about it. You guys created this policy. We saw it. We want to see it come to fruition. But if we're hearing that HCA negotiations are being had, you can imagine how discouraging that is for me as an applicant, sitting in this room and basically hearing a lie that has been told to me that there was not an update after we requested one. So that being said, I will want to say this, where we are in the process. So delivery, unlike any other licensure, has what is called a pre-certification license. Now, that part does not necessarily have to go through the city, but there are so many different steps that have to go into it, namely having your business set up, operating agreements, all of these type of plans that would make it so that you know what you're talking about in terms of operating your business. Everything from inventory, security plans, storage plans, you name it. We got all of that submitted to the CCC, and we did get approved for pre-certification. Now, at this stage, where we're at is we're trying to get to provisional licensure. So in order for us to get to provisional licensure, we do need to have an operating compliant HCA agreement with the city, along with all of the other host of things like an architectural review. And I won't bore you with any of the minutia, but it's definitely a process. And while we're there, we have done everything from getting all of our checklists done from the planning board, from getting things like a transportation plan done so that we can measure how many distances from our location to, deliveries would be out from our place. We've gotten things done like the architects that have come to our facility just to measure that the plans are in compliance. We've gotten other things done, like there's waste management plans. There's so many things that we've been checking off our list, and then the one thing that we haven't been able to our dismay, is cooperating with the city on an HCA. Now, there is some promise, right? We've had conversations. I'm hearing now that there's an update. I would love to see that. But there's a couple things that we said we should be wary of. That 3% flat rate fee that we had in the previous HCA, gone, right? We want that to be gone because once it goes over to the CCC, we want it to also be compliant. We also are here to let you guys know that in the HCA, there's a couple other things that we should just be mindful of, such as making a $3K per day penalty fee if you're operating without an HCA. That is not common, right? It's not commonplace to see that in much of the policy around cannabis policy, so I just want to make that wary. I have a list of 8 things just to keep in mind, but I'm not going to go into it now. I can submit something to the chair so that you guys all have it for your records. And then I will just wrap up with this point. We want to be an example, not just for the city, but for what we're talking about here. We know that there are people both in cannabis and otherwise that would want to get into the space. There are people that are leaving, closing their licensures. We've seen things happening with the CCC. It's a mess. But at the same time, we're not only just trying to clean it up, we're part of the crew. We're trying to be here to make sure we can make a long-lasting impact. I think that it says a lot if you can get a Hispanic, Black woman-owned business in Lowell launched in delivery as one of your first ones. There's not very many delivery companies, and where they are is in Boston. We still get, as a city, a benefit from having cannabis businesses, such as the local cannabis tax. And that's totally up to you guys how you want to review it. I love my community, and I really believe that even if we were to have the HCA impact fee, right, all of those fees, if I knew they were going to things like parks, making sure safety is in our parks, right, making sure that we have the proper resources so that we can stop a lot of these social issues in our community, I would be totally behind that. And you know me, Chair, I really care about these issues in our community. And most importantly, I love to see a future in our city where the children here could be proud of it. I don't want kids having access to cannabis, which is why delivering directly to the doorstep of someone in the home with a verified ID is similar to going to the dispensary, only the other thing is there's a little bit more privacy, more convenience directly to your home. So there's a lot of things that we're talking about here, and I know that there's much to include, but I think especially as we're talking about diversifying the cannabis business space and what it looks like for other people, this is what we want to see. Make it open on Main Street. Main Street is these main streets in downtown. We do want to revitalize it. There's other opportunities to open up zoning. So think about other areas that aren't just in the LI district, right? Or in the OP district. These areas, you don't really get much foot traffic, but we can put a lot of the benefits of why it's great to live in Lowell and do business in Lowell right in our downtown in all of our industries in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think we're fortunate to have members of the community willing to step up, speak, explain the experiences that they're going through, and it's our responsibility to adjust accordingly and partner and allow these businesses to thrive and not put hurdles in their way, but yet remove these hurdles. And I appreciate your input, and thank you, and I look forward to future conversations on this.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the get-go, this body, when we create the original HCA, looking in a bigger lens, looking at for minorities, owned businesses, and we understand that dispensaries is a big businesses. Usually, people have deep pocket. We understand that the process is complicated, but the people with deep pocket can go get an attorney. no question asked. When you look at delivery, there's a lot less need of deep pocket. I think it's important that in this city, when we have policies and or any old or update host community agreement, we should post it. And that's why we have websites for. All departments should do so. Not doing it is not responsible. Not doing it, not engaging, not communicating those messages to the community. And I would urge that with regard to the delivery, that we do our utmost to reach out to the minority community, because the Cannabis Control Commission want that to happen. And we want that to happen here as well. If we have a policy, we have an updated host community agreement, we should post it in the website. We should be receptive. We should say, okay, let's come in. Let's talk about it. I understand you don't have an attorney yet. The process is complicated, but let's sit down. I'll do what I can to help. And that's what I expect the city to do. And that's what I expect all departments to do. It's disheartening to hear that we have an updated HCA, and it's not communicated to the community. And those who want to be invested, involved in the community, I would urge all departments to do so going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Noon. Would any other of my colleagues or anybody in attendance like to make some comments? Mr. Clerk, if it's okay with you, I'd like to keep this subcommittee open. I plan on scheduling another one within a month or so to continue these conversations, because we need some updates. So what would be the best process for that?
You would adjourn it today. You would adjourn it today and then give me another date. We'll have to post it again, but that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
Before we do we have a motion in front of us to ask for a report of the balance of the funding? Do we have that motion? If we do not, I'd like to report the balance of the funding in the reserve account from revenue derived from the excise on the marijuana. As of 2022, there was money in that fund. We only used, from what I can gather, $190,000. So do we have that money still, and what is the purpose?
I second the motion, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
Councilor Noon.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
3 yeas.
I'd also like to make the motion requesting an update on delivery. Where are we currently?
Yep. So
Second.
move. Second. Roll call.
Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Councilor Noon.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you. So I think this is a perfect example of, again, we haven't really met to discuss this with a lot of moving pieces. That's out of a local control with the commission. We're aware of that, but I think the most important point that was raised here tonight is we have a member of the public that came and spoke, that's well-informed, operates in this space, and they're explaining some hurdles that members of our public and potential business owners in our community are experiencing. So I think it's a great opportunity to start working to pull these hurdles out of the way. So I'll keep this going. Motion adjourned, but we'll keep this conversation going.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Mercia. Thank you, and have a good night.